Hi, I'm Maris. I don't usually tell people this story, not because I'm ashamed, but because most folks don't believe me. Or worse, they think I'm exaggerating, but I promise you, every part of it is true. It happened on my birthday, not a random Tuesday, not a heated family argument that spiraled. No, my birthday. The cake was still on the kitchen table when my father handed me a plastic grocery bag with my name scrawled on it like I was being evicted from a summer camp instead of the house I called home. "Hey," he said, casual as ever. "We went ahead and packed some of your stuff." I stared at the bag. It was overstuffed, bulging, stretched too thin. A few shirt sleeves peeked out like they were embarrassed to be part of this. "My stuff?" "We just thought it was time," he said, shifting his weight like this whole conversation bored him. "You've been here a while." I tried to laugh, thought maybe this was some weird joke. "Dad, it's my birthday." He didn't blink. "Right, which makes it a perfect time for a new start, right?" I looked at the cake again. Chocolate, unevenly frosted. "Happy birthday, Maris," squeezed into one corner like the decorator ran out of space, which in hindsight felt about right. "What am I supposed to do? Move out mid-slice?" "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said. And just like that, my mom appeared behind him, holding a Tupperware of leftover lasagna like she was sending me off to college. "We saved you some," she said, placing it on top of the bag. "For the road." They weren't even pretending to be subtle. They had planned this, packed my things, probably scheduled it between coffee and reruns of Wheel of Fortune. From the corner, Ava appeared, my sister, freshly showered, skin glowing, wearing the necklace I gave her last Christmas. She took a bite of cake like she hadn't just inherited my space, my bed, my share of the closet. "Sorry," she said, her tone laced in faux sympathy. "I told them to wait until morning, but you know how Dad gets once he's made up his mind." "Right," I said. "Just couldn't wait to kick out the birthday girl." Ava shrugged. "You've got your whole life ahead of you. I'm the one with the divorce, the debt, the therapy bills. And somehow I'm the one getting evicted." She didn't reply, just licked a smear of frosting off her thumb and went back to scrolling on her phone. I turned back to my father. "So that's it? You're just done with me?" "You're independent," he said with a smile. "We raised you right." I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked up the bag. The lasagna slipped off the top and landed with a dull thunk on the tile. No one moved to pick it up. "You know," I said, voice calm, too calm, "I had a surprise for you today." That made Ava look up. My father raised an eyebrow. "I was going to tell you I got promoted, that I could finally afford my own place, that I'd saved enough to start helping out with the mortgage." My mom's smile twitched. "But now?" I adjusted the bag on my shoulder. "Now I think I'll keep that money for something better." "Like what?" Ava scoffed. I looked her in the eye. "Closure." And with that, I walked out. No cake, no hugs, no tears, just silence behind me, and a storm beginning to gather. Some stories don't begin with betrayal. Mine did, with birthday cake still on the table. I didn't cry the night they kicked me out. Not on the walk to my car, not when I realized the gas tank was nearly empty, and not even when I found a sticky note on my windshield that said, "Next time, don't block the mailbox." It wasn't even my street anymore. Instead, I drove. No destination, just the road. I took a left out of habit, then another, until the houses turned into highway and the highway into silence. And somewhere between mile marker 92 and a closed-down diner, with one flickering neon letter left, I pulled over and let the engine hum while my hands stayed locked at 10 and 2. That silence? It wasn't peaceful. It was loud. Deafening even. Because the truth is, when someone cuts you out of their life, the shock isn't immediate. It drips in, quietly, cruelly, like a faucet that never quite shuts off. You hear it when you're alone, when no one's talking over you, when you finally have space to think. I stared out the windshield at nothing and thought about the first time I felt disposable. It was picture day in 3rd grade. The night before, I had begged my mom to let me wear the yellow dress with the little embroidered daisies. It made me feel brave. Not pretty, brave. "No," she said flatly. "It's wrinkled." I offered to iron it myself. She said that wasn't the point. She picked out a different outfit, gray corduroy and a blouse with a collar so stiff it made my neck itch. I remember fidgeting the whole morning, trying not to cry, because I knew if my eyes were red in the photo, she'd blame me for ruining it. That was the first photo I remember hating myself in, but I smiled anyway, because that's what I learned to do, make myself smaller to fit into their picture. In high school, it got worse. I learned to watch my words around Ava, because if she cried, even crocodile tears, my parents looked at me like I'd kicked a puppy. "She's sensitive," Mom would say. "She's manipulative," I once muttered under my breath. That earned me a week of silent treatment from the whole house. By the time I graduated, I had learned to shrink myself so well, I barely recognized the girl in the mirror. I worked 2 jobs after class, one at a bookstore, the other babysitting for the wealthy couple across the cul-de-sac. I saved every dollar. Not for a car, not for clothes, but for escape. I had a spreadsheet, hidden in a password-protected folder on an old laptop. Projected rent, emergency fund, bus pass, resume drafts. But every time I got close to leaving, something happened. Ava broke up with a boyfriend and needed support. Dad's back went out again, and I was the only one who knew which meds made him nauseous. Mom called me her rock, and rocks don't get to crumble. I remember one night, right before Christmas, when I told them I had been offered a paid internship in another state. "I'd be gone for 4 months, I said carefully. Dad didn't even look up from the TV. "And who's going to take your mom to her appointments?" Mom frowned. "We'd miss you too much." "Ava?" She just scoffed and said, "Wow, you really don't care about this family, do you?" So I turned it down, and no one ever brought it up again. I think that's the part people don't get. Being erased doesn't always happen in a single violent slash. Sometimes it's a slow erasure, a quiet redirection of attention, 1,000 little reminders that you are not the priority, that you are replaceable, convenient when needed, invisible when not. The thing is, I accepted it for too long until now. The dashboard clock blinked 2:37 a.m. I was still sitting there. Engine idling, gas wasting. Life paused. That's when I picked up my phone. Not to call them, not to cry to someone, but to open an app they'd forgotten I had access to. My name was still on the family's joint credit card, the one Dad opened years ago when he needed me to co-sign to boost his limit. The same card they used to buy Ava's wedding deposit, the down payment for her therapy retreat, and the last-minute trip they took without me, because there weren't enough seats. I tapped the app. 1 click. Freeze card. It was shockingly easy. No passwords, no warnings. Just confirm. And I did. Then I logged into the second account, Mom's gas card, the one in both our names because she needed a backup in case she forgot her purse. Freeze. Then the savings account, the one they opened for me as a future investment, but had been draining slowly to help cover house repairs. I withdrew my portion, every cent I had contributed over the years, with interest. As the transfer confirmed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. My phone buzzed. A message from Ava. "Don't forget to drop off the Wi-Fi router. It's still in your name. No happy birthday, no sorry, just logistics." I typed back, "Already disconnected. You'll need to open your own." I didn't hit send right away. I stared at the blinking cursor. Then I deleted the text, and I turned off my phone. Not out of spite, not even out of anger, but because, for the first time, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. If someone asked me what changed that night, I'd say nothing and everything. I was still the girl they tried to edit out of the picture. But now I was holding the frame. Ever realized you were never really part of the picture? They just needed you to hold the camera? The motel room smelled like lemon cleaner and stale cigarettes. The kind of place where everything feels slightly damp, even when it isn't. But it was cheap, anonymous, and most importantly, temporary. I stood by the sink, brushing my teeth with a travel-sized toothbrush I bought at a gas station, staring at my reflection like she was someone else entirely, someone who finally said, "Enough." Outside, a truck downshifted loud enough to rattle the blinds. It was 6:12 a.m. I hadn't slept. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel brave. I felt raw, like someone had peeled me open and left me to figure out which parts were still mine. That's when the text started. First, Mom. "Mom, Hey honey, just checking in. I think there was a mix-up with the bank this morning. Let me know if you used the credit card. It got declined at the pharmacy. I didn't respond. Then Ava. Seriously? Did you freeze the cards? What is wrong with you? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I didn't want to engage, but I also didn't want her rewriting the narrative, like she always did. So I typed, slowly, me. They're in my name. I removed myself. That's all. No insults, no apology, just a fact. She replied instantly. Ava. You're so dramatic. You left, remember? You don't get to burn the house down, too. Burn the house down? I nearly laughed, as if I hadn't spent years putting out their fires. By noon, I had found a co-working space that offered free coffee and semi-functioning Wi-Fi with the purchase of a $5 day pass. I opened my laptop, checked my balance, set up new banking passwords, ordered a P.O. box. I was doing things they never expected me to be capable of, because when someone is used to you being the fallback plan, your independence feels like betrayal. At 3:45 p.m., my phone rang. It was Dad. I let it go to voicemail. He never left messages, only called when he needed something. Then the second call came. This time I answered. Maris, he said. His tone clipped. What is this? I tried to fill up my truck and the card was declined. I said nothing. I had to put groceries back. Do you know how humiliating that is? Still, I stayed silent. Look, if this is about what happened the other night. What happened, I interrupted, was that you kicked me out, on my birthday. He huffed. You're taking it too personally. I am the person it happened to. There was a pause, a long one. I heard him shift the phone, maybe rubbing his temple, maybe mouthing something to Mom. Then he tried again, softer this time. We didn't think it through, okay? Things were tense. We've all been under stress. No, I said finally. You thought it through plenty. You boxed up my things before I blew out the candles. You scheduled my exile between dinner and dessert. His voice grew tight. You're not the only one struggling, you know. Ava's been going through hell. I closed my eyes. There it was. The hierarchy, the script. Her pain always mattered more. Then she can use her own credit to pay for it, I said. I'm done subsidizing your empathy. And I hung up. That night I checked into a new room. Cleaner, brighter, a kitchenette, a real bed. I made myself pasta. The sauce came from a jar, but I seasoned it like it mattered. I poured myself a glass of water like it was wine. And then I opened a notebook I hadn't touched in years. I used to write in it when I was younger, back before I knew how heavy silence could be. I flipped to a blank page and wrote at the top, things I did right. It felt silly at first, but I wrote anyway. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I walked away. I protected myself. I didn't let their shame become mine. Halfway through the list, I realized something else. I wasn't writing a list of things I did right. I was writing my way out of who they'd trained me to be. The next morning, I got a call from a number I hadn't seen in years. Ruth, my aunt. My mom's estranged older sister. The one they called a freeloader, a drama magnet, and once when they thought I wasn't listening, an emotional charity case. But Ruth had always made space for me. Quietly, thoughtfully. She'd send me used books with notes in the margins. She once mailed me a scarf with a letter that just said, I saw this and thought of how often you give and how rarely you ask. I answered, Maris? Her voice was gentle, soft, but not weak. Hi, I said, surprised I didn't cry hearing it. I heard what happened. I waited, braced for pity, but Ruth just said, Do you need somewhere to land for a bit? No strings, no guilt, no backhanded reminders that I'd owe anyone. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. Yeah, I said, I think I do. That afternoon, I drove, west, toward the coast. The road opened in front of me like an unmarked page, and for once, I didn't feel like a footnote. I was writing something new. Ever felt more seen by a near stranger than by your own blood? Ruth's apartment was on the second floor of a weathered blue house with chipped trim and mismatched window blinds. It smelled faintly of sage and coffee and something warm I couldn't name. The walls were filled with art, none of it expensive, all of it intentional. Not a single piece matched the furniture, And yet somehow everything belonged. She opened the door before I knocked. "You look exhausted," she said, not unkindly. "I feel worse." Ruth stepped aside, let me in without ceremony. No awkward hug, no fake pleasantries, just presence, and that alone made me want to collapse. She gestured toward the couch. "Shoes off. I'm making tea. Do you still like peppermint?" I nodded. "You remember that?" I remember everything they tried to forget. I hadn't seen her in over 5 years. She used to come around during holidays, but after the last fight, with Mom calling her selfish for not contributing to Dad's medical bills, she just stopped being invited. I never asked why. Maybe I knew. Maybe it was safer not to. The tea burned my tongue, and I didn't mind. We sat in the quiet. Not the kind that needs to be filled. The kind that wraps around you like a blanket that actually fits. Finally, she said, "They kicked you out." I nodded. "Let me guess," she continued. "They said it wasn't personal." I laughed once, bitter and low. "They boxed up my things before dessert." She stared into her mug. "They've always been efficient with the things they want removed." The weight of that sentence sat between us. "You ever wonder why they cut me off?" she asked, not looking at me. I had, but I never knew how to ask. "I said something once," she continued. "Something your mother didn't like." "What was it?" Ruth took a breath. "I told her that you deserved better than the life they were grooming you for." I blinked. "Grooming?" She nodded. Not in the malicious way, not like they had some grand conspiracy, but in that slow, habitual way people treat the quiet one, the dependable one. They turn you into a utility, a background character in your own house. I didn't speak, didn't need to. "I watched it happening for years," she said. "They praised you when it served them, punished you with silence when you asked for more." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you stop it?" "I tried," she said, voice steady. "But when someone builds their identity around being a good parent, they don't handle mirrors very well." We talked for hours. About Ava, about the gaslighting, the way Mom had once told me I was too sensitive for crying when they forgot to pick me up from school. The way Dad only ever said he was proud when I fixed something, never when I created anything. "You weren't supposed to outgrow them," Ruth said quietly. "You were supposed to orbit them, like a dependable moon." I leaned back, overwhelmed. "I don't even know who I am outside of them." "You're about to find out." The next day, Ruth handed me a folder. She set it on the kitchen table like it was something fragile. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof." I opened it slowly. Inside were copies of financial documents, statements, agreements, old notarized forms. Some I recognized, some I didn't. "What am I looking at?" "Your name," she said. "On their accounts, on their tax returns, on the utilities, even the property deed for that cabin your dad inherited. You're listed as a secondary owner." I stared at her. "I thought they removed me from everything." "No, they just made you believe they did." I flipped to a page highlighted in yellow. A credit card application. My name, scrawled in block letters as the co-signer. Dated 3 years ago. The same month Dad said they'd cleared all joint accounts. I couldn't breathe. "You didn't know?" Ruth asked. "No," I whispered. "They told me I wasn't responsible for anything anymore." "You were still their safety net," she said. "Even when they were pushing you out the front door, they were keeping your name on the paperwork, just in case." It was worse than betrayal. It was functionally strategic. They had erased me emotionally, but kept me financially tethered. "I can't even be mad," I said. "It's just efficient." "No," Ruth replied. "It's exploitative." That night, I went through every document, line by line. I made a list. Banks to call, accounts to freeze, property rights to clarify. Ruth sat across from me, sometimes reading, sometimes silent. When I reached the end, she slid one more paper across the table. "This is optional," she said. It was a formal letter, short, clean, notice of partition intent, joint property severance. "This allows you to legally dissolve any co-ownership of the property," she explained. "No drama, no contact, just mail it. Let the law do the talking." I held the paper for a long time. "What if they come after me?" I asked. "They won't," she said, eyes sharp, "because you know more than they think. And because you kept the receipts. Before bed, I got a text from Ava. Ava, you're blowing this way out of proportion. They were just stressed. I didn't respond, but I opened my notes app, typed a single line. They were never stressed when I was helping them. In the stillness of Ruth's spare room, I felt something shift. Not a storm, not an explosion, just space. The kind you don't realize you need until you're not being watched, judged, used. I wasn't healed, not yet. But I was awake. What if cutting ties isn't the end of family, but the beginning of self? It began with a voicemail. 3 days after I filed the official paperwork to sever my name from every shared asset, my father left a message. He never left messages. Maris, I don't know what you did exactly, but the bank called me. Something about a flag on the deed? I need you to call me back. This is serious. You can't just walk away from responsibilities like this. He said, responsibilities, like I hadn't carried them on my back for a decade. Like I hadn't been their emergency contact, default cosigner, last resort bill payer, and emotional punching bag all in one. Ruth was sitting across from me when I played the voicemail out loud. She didn't flinch. Let them sweat, she said, flipping through a manila folder. They never thought you'd do it. Now they're scrambling. What happens if they push back legally? She shrugged. They can contest the severance if they prove financial dependency, but that would mean putting everything under a microscope. I don't think your dad wants a courtroom looking through his books. She looked up. And trust me, neither does Ava. The next day I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, I'm Ava's boyfriend. She's freaking out. I don't really know what's going on, but can you just talk to her, please? I stared at the screen. She sent him to talk to me, like she couldn't lower herself to text me directly, or like her words had lost power, so she found someone else to speak them. I didn't respond. That night, Ruth handed me a small brown envelope. What's this? I printed something, she said. Didn't want to email it. Some things are better read with your hands. Inside was a spreadsheet, itemized, time-stamped, complete with receipts. She had logged every time I had paid for something related to the house, utilities, family bills, co-payments, school fees, and even a gas bill from 3 years ago when my mother's name was overdrawn, and I quietly paid it to avoid a shutoff. I started tracking it the second I realized what they were doing, Ruth said, sipping her tea. I couldn't stop it, but I could record it. I flipped through page after page. Some entries I remembered. Most I had blocked out. Why didn't you tell me you had all this? I asked. She looked at me. Because you wouldn't have believed you deserved to use it. 2 days later, my inbox filled up with emails, mostly password change requests, security alerts, then a message from my old shared family email address, one that had originally been created for family vacation planning and bill coordination. Subject: Urgent, please respond. It was from my mother. Maris, I know things are tense right now, but this is getting out of hand. We didn't expect you to escalate things legally. Your father is under a lot of pressure, and Ava's dealing with her own issues. Can we please talk? You're still family. Mom. No apology, no ownership, just you're still family. As if the blood tie erased the paper trail. As if DNA outranked dignity. I closed the email and sent a copy of the spreadsheet to my lawyer. That weekend, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my cousin Lily. We weren't close. She lived 2 towns over, came to holidays sometimes, but always stayed quiet. She sounded nervous. Hey, this might be weird, she said. But is it true? Did they really kick you out on your birthday? I froze. Why? She sighed. Because Ava's been telling everyone you left in a tantrum, that you emptied their accounts out of revenge, that you cut ties because you couldn't handle being a team player. Of course. The narrative had shifted. Now I was selfish. Now I was unstable. But Lily wasn't finished. I didn't believe it, she said, because I remembered the year Grandma was in the hospital and you stayed overnight with her 3 days in a row, while Ava posted beach pics. I closed my eyes. She never showed up, Lily added. Your mom said she was too overwhelmed. She always is, I murmured. I just thought you should know, she said. People are starting to ask questions. That night, Ruth made roasted sweet potatoes and lentil soup. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, warm, filling. I think it's starting to unravel, I told her. She didn't ask what it was. Instead, she said, "They built the house on you. They just didn't think you'd ever move." At 11:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. Ava. This time, a voice message. Her voice was shaky, not performative, not put on. "Maris, if you hear this, I just need to know, did you plan all of this? Like, were you waiting, watching us fall apart?" I didn't answer, but I thought about it. Not because it was true, but because the idea that I had planned this, calculated it, made them afraid. And maybe they should have been. Not because I was cruel, but because I had finally stopped being convenient. When someone rewrites your story, how long before the truth starts leaking through the cracks? The calls slowed. That was the first sign. Not because they stopped caring, but because they realized I wouldn't answer. And people like them, they don't waste effort unless it earns a result. Silence to them wasn't peace. It was power they didn't own. And I was learning to wield it. It had been 12 days since I walked out of that house. 12 days since I touched their door. 12 days since I returned their last voicemail. The one where Dad said, "You're not the only one with problems, Maris." 12 days was all it took. Ruth noticed it first, on a Wednesday afternoon, over coffee that she made strong enough to strip paint. "You've been quiet," she said. "I have nothing left to explain." She nodded, flipping through a local community blog she followed. Then she paused. "What?" I asked. She rotated the screen toward me. The post was from someone I didn't know, a woman named Carol. It was short, just 2 paragraphs. "Just wanted to say thank you to the girl who used to shovel my driveway last winter when her dad forgot." "You didn't have to do that. I hope you're okay. Heard some things. Hope they're not true." I stared at the words. Then the comment section. A few people chimed in, some vague, some clear, then one from my old high school teacher. Some folks don't appreciate what they have until silence answers the door. I didn't share it. I didn't reply, but I screenshotted it, because it wasn't just a blog post. It was the beginning of an echo. 2 days later, Ava's engagement announcement was quietly taken down. Not officially, not with some dramatic breakup post, but the photos disappeared. The comments went unanswered. And Lily, my cousin, texted me again. "Lily, you didn't hear this from me, but Ava and Chase postponed everything. Apparently, someone brought up the credit stuff at dinner with his family." I sat with that message for a long time. Not because I was happy, but because I hadn't even touched that thread. I hadn't leaked receipts, hadn't called anyone, hadn't spoken a word. But the truth? It never needs volume, just patience. The following week, I received an invitation. A paper one, glossy envelope, gold-foiled lettering. "You are invited to a celebration of love and legacy. Dad's retirement plus Ava's birthday. Combined event." I almost laughed. Of course they would roll it into one. Celebrate 2 egos under one rented roof. No apology, no message. Just an invitation. Like the past 2 weeks hadn't happened. Like silence could be erased with catering. I was going to throw it away, but Ruth looked at it, then looked at me. "You should go," she said. "Why?" "Because sometimes it's not about them, it's about closure that doesn't wait for permission." The event was held in a rented hall across town, one of those overly bright spaces with folding chairs and centerpieces that try too hard. I didn't dress up, I didn't show up early. I arrived 15 minutes after it started, on purpose. The room quieted slightly when I walked in. Not in a movie scene way, but in that subtle, collective pause, like everyone had heard a rumor but wasn't sure if it was safe to believe yet. Ava saw me first. Her expression flickered, relief, then discomfort, then forced joy. "You made it," she said. "I wasn't sure if I was still on the guest list," I said flatly. She gave a little laugh. "Oh, come on, your family." I said nothing, just looked around. Looked at the framed photos on the table, Dad in his uniform, Ava in a prom dress, Mom holding a tray of Christmas cookies. I wasn't in a single one, not even cropped out. Just not there. I walked to the refreshments table and poured myself a small cup of punch. Nobody came over. A few people whispered. One or two offered half smiles. Then came the speeches. Mom went first. Long, rehearsed. About how proud she was of Dad and Ava. About resilience. About unity. I stood at the back, quiet, watchful. Then Dad took the mic, thanked everyone, laughed at his own jokes, told a story about Ava backing his truck into the garage door, and everyone laughed, even though I had paid to replace it. Near the end, he said, "Family is about who shows up, always, through everything." And I don't know what came over me, but I stepped forward, not to interrupt, just to stand closer. He noticed, hesitated, and for one breathless second, we locked eyes. He faltered, just slightly. I mean, he recovered. We all make mistakes, right? I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I just held his gaze. And in that silence, he knew. So did Mom, so did Ava. Because I hadn't said a word. And they heard me anyway. When it ended, I didn't stay for dessert. I left my untouched cup on the table and walked out without saying goodbye. Not one person stopped me, but Lily caught up with me in the parking lot. She looked nervous. Then she said, "You're the only one who didn't lie in there." I looked at her, and she added, "It's starting to show." Then she hugged me, tight, quick, like she had to before she lost the nerve. I watched her walk back inside. Then I got in my car, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I felt clean, not right, not happy, but clean. Like the dirt they'd left on me was never mine to wash off in the first place. The envelope was ivory, thick, heavier than it looked. I left it on their front porch before sunrise. No knock, no note. Just placed it down, flat against the welcome mat they once asked me to clean every Saturday like it meant something. Inside was a single document. Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights. Signed, notarized, final. I wasn't just walking away from the money. I was walking away from the narrative. This idea that I owed them a future because they gave me a past. They didn't call. Not for days. Then, one afternoon, Ruth handed me her phone. They called me instead. I took it, read the message. "Mom, why would she do this? We never meant for things to get this far." I gave the phone back. "She thinks this is a negotiation," I said. "It was," Ruth replied, "until you stopped playing." The day I moved into my new place, there were no balloons, no welcome committee. Just me, a box of dishes, and a plant Ruth insisted I name. "I think I'll call her Fern," I said, setting it on the windowsill. "Original," Ruth smirked. We laughed. That night, I sat on the floor with a bowl of cereal and no furniture, staring at the blank wall across from me. And I felt nothing. No grief, no rage, no pride. Just stillness. The kind that only comes when you finally realize you were never broken. You were just in the wrong house. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I used to think loyalty meant staying, even when it hurt. But healing begins the moment you stop explaining your worth to those who refuse to see it. I didn't slam the door. I just stopped knocking. And in that silence, I found peace. Not revenge, not validation, just the quiet strength of choosing myself. So let me ask you this. Have you ever outgrown a place that still calls itself home? What helped you walk away? Or what's holding you back? If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or why it hit home. If it didn't, I'd still love to hear why. Maybe this wasn't your story, but someone else needs to hear yours. If this video reached your heart, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next one. We're just getting started.